Hey guys, for Belinja95, recording live from your local county prison cell. It's been a little bit, but I think I took a good amount of time to, to put this video together. So this fight is one that I saw originally, and it was kind of just back and forth, but it made sense to me eventually. It's one of those things. I'm gonna get into it. It's Manjiro from Tokyo, Mikey from Tokyo Revengers, and AJ Styles from wrestling. You get to talk about wrestling again. I love it. Um, for those of you who don't know, the theme of this fight is that this is a little nuanced, but Mikey is the leader of the what is it the Manji Gang or whatever I think it's called, right? And I have a passing familiarity with Tokyo Revengers. And AJ Styles was the one of the primary leaders of a faction in New Japan Pro Wrestling called the Bullet Club, which, so they're both, these former gang leaders. They're both these elite, kind of top dog kind of characters. And I do say characters because, again, implementing kayfabe is going to, for those of you who didn't see my Edge versus Midnight video, that's, I do it's a bit of a ride that comes from that. But the thing about this fight is that it's not quite as crazy as that. You see, even though, so brief explanation, kayfabe is essentially the concept that the characters that the wrestlers are portraying are actually them. They are real people or real whatever they are, and that everything that is proposing to be happening in the ring is actually happening. Right? So when somebody breaks an obvious prop chair in their bare hands, you say that guy broke a real steel folding chair with his bare hands. When somebody punches a hole in a truck, you say that guy actually punched a hole in a truck. Concept of kayfabe, right? And when somebody shoots lightning from their hands, you say that guy actually shot lightning from his hands. So that's what lets that's kind of the only way you can have a wrestler in Death Battle, in my opinion. An actual wrestler, not like a wrestling video game character or something. But so with people like Edge or Randy Savage, though I don't like how they handled Randy Savage personally, but I guess they used the internet assumption of Randy Savage rather than the wrestler exactly. When I used Edge, there's like the Slim Jim commercials that have him doing all this crazy stuff, and there's like his faction with the Brood, which meant he was he had all these supernatural powers and all of that. When you do that, you can come up with a lot of like actual things that the character can do. AJ Styles doesn't have that sort of stuff. He is just kind of like an athletic wrestler. And though kayfabe does permit us to say that he's been, in combat for the last, 30 years rather than, and his opponents have been perhaps superhuman or peak human in quality, we're not going to be saying that he can, shoot fire or anything, or that he can, create darkness from nothingness, or that he can teleport, or he can, transport people to rings or whatever, We're not going to be saying that. So this is kind of just like a high-level human versus high-level human fight. But since we're already talking about it, let's start with AJ Styles, because I know him significantly better than I do Manjiro. So even though I think it's the opposite of what's on the thumbnail and the title, fuck it, whatever. So AJ Styles started his career in the late 90s, I believe, mid to late 90s, and he has wrestled from company to company. In that time, he's one of the only wrestlers in the industry, I believe, that has held major titles in both WWE, TNA or Impact Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling. He was a late addition to WCW. This is just all career stuff to get it out of the way. When we talk about signature moves, he has a laundry list of them. His personal favorite being the Styles Clash, but then he's got things like the Pele Kick. He's got things like the Spiral Tap, the Flasbury Flop. This is just me nerding out about this. Phenomenal DDT, phenomenal forearm, and calf crusher, things like that. That actually might be relevant shit. Okay, I should say that. Yeah, but, and now he's kind of more well known as being a former leader of New Japan Pro Wrestling's infamous Bullet Club, and current leader of the WWE's approximation of that group. So that, and that group essentially did just take over the company. They were the New Age NWO, and they took it became New Japan Pro Wrestling / Bullet Club, rather than, they just kind of inserted themselves into the narrative and took over to the point where they were kind of, as a faction, they were untouchable because they were part of the program, essentially. They were part of the, so every match had a Bullet Club influence. Every title had a Bullet Club contender, if not Bullet Club champion. And it became, and he was on top until he wasn't. And he also wasn't even the first guy, but he, Balor or Prince Devitt, if you prefer. We're not going to probably, for the sake of Styles is in this fight because Styles has a 30-year career and because he's more, he's a more mainstay superstar. Yeah, but now let's get into feats here, because it's, like I said, it's kind of hard to be, take wrestling feats until you consider that in character, AJ Styles has feuded with The Undertaker. Now, I've said this with Edge. The Undertaker is an undead descendant of hell who has shot lightning from his hands, can teleport, can create darkness, can resurrect himself, can be buried alive and survive, set on fire and survive, has lifted nearly half a ton, has buried people in cement, he's done all these things. So, and AJ Styles took a shovel to the stomach from him. He got the shit kicked out of him, but with a shovel, and survived. AJ Styles has also fought John Cena, and John Cena, in real life, this is not kayfabe, has actually carried over almost 800 pounds on his shoulders. He didn't squat it or anything, but he essentially fireman's carried almost 800 pounds, so that's a legitimate thing. So, and he wrestled with a guy who can fireman's carry 800 pounds on his shoulders. And when you consider that it's actually, with kayfabe, that they're fighting, this guy's fighting a dude who can lift 800 pounds. So, there's things like that. And he's taken all sorts. He's fought against, Olympic gold medalists. He's fought against, martial arts experts. He's fought against, just about, bar brawlers. He's fought about every kind you can. And he's done it for the last, like I said, about 30 years, to the point where he's perfected his craft. I mean, craft in the sense that it's a martial art, not in the sense that it's a, showmanship art, because, kayfabe. Yeah. So, AJ Styles, great athlete. I'm trying to avoid using the term phenomenal because that's just cliche. Manjiro. Okay, so here's the weird part, believe it or not. So Tokyo Revengers is a bit of a weird show. There's time travel in it. So Manjiro or Mikey is the leader of the, again, I think it's called the Manji Gang, which are a biker gang full of middle schoolers. We are making a 40-something-year-old man fight a 12 or 13-year-old. Yes. And these guys, ran roughshod and pretty much, were like the number one street gang in Japan in the time, because this was in like the 90s or something, because Tokyo Revengers takes place from the perspective of a grown adult who is quite literally going back, reliving his youth, as in going back into the body of his 12 or 13-year-old self and living that time period, which is why I said there's time travel, because it takes place on different timelines. And Mikey was their leader, and throughout all of the backstabbing and competition that was put between them, he stayed the leader in pretty much like 3 or 4 different timelines, I think. So he's, pretty definitively just who he is kind of makes him, a badass. And when I say he's a badass, I know he said he's 12 or 13. This kid has knocked out, like, adult black belts. This kid has taken on 15 or so men at once in fight, This guy got triple teamed by a gang leader and both of his subordinates, and got beaten within an inch of his life with a tire iron. And because one of them has his leg, and his, a roundhouse kick is kind of like his signature move. Because one of the guys is holding his leg, he lifts this 12 or 13-year-old kid. Actually, I think he's older. I think he's like a teenager. Well, I mean, 13's a teenager, but I think he's like a high schooler. That's the whole point, is that they're fighting like a high school gang. He lifts this high school kid with one leg. He lifts him, like, guy's holding on to his leg, and he lifts him up into the air with that leg, and still knocks the guy out with a roundhouse kick. So, this kid's an absolute animal, right? So when you talk about feats like that, it's, you don't think of him as a 12 or 13-year-old kid. You think of him as a 12 or 13-year-old, like, war vet at that point. And then probably one of my favorite things, because this is a series that's so weird in how its time travel is placed. The main character of the show, like I said, is going back in time and reliving his life and his body, and then like changing his present by, changing what he did as a kid. He went back in time and reestablished Mikey as the leader, and Mikey, became Mikey's right-hand man or something, and now he's got a full mafia position, right? He goes and he prevents somebody from being killed, and, and now he's, now another gang rises to power. Stuff like that, right? Because he keeps going back and forth, the main character ends up fighting Mikey, right, to save him, because Mikey's, like, trying to murder somebody or something. And, because he's been going back and forth between his adult and kid self, he actually starts being able to see, like, premonitions of what's about to happen. So while he's fighting Mikey, he's literally seeing Mikey's moves a second before they happen and dodging them. So he's literally looking into the future while fighting this guy. And Mikey still actually kills him, like takes a sword and impales him with it. So Mikey fought a guy who, again, by this point had, like, he fought somebody with an adult brain who had several timelines of experience, right? Because he had relived and fought as this kid several times over. So we had basically had, he had this experience loop going on, so that probably equates to, like, several more years than Mikey had. and who could literally see into the future to predict his moves, and Mikey still beat him. Yeah. Sorry for this, definitely. I'm a little under the weather right now. But yeah, so that's kind of the crazy part about this. So looking into this, right? Looking into this fight, I mean, it's kind of hard to do these like human character versus human character fights, even though these two kind of stretch what's, considered human. It's hard to do that because then you're really like you're picking at like the little stuff. It's the devil's in the details at that point. So looking into this, I mean, yes, AJ has like Mikey's entire, double Mikey's life of experience, in wrestling or in combat, um, and has fought a wider array of opponents and has had like all these different experiences. But Mikey, like I said, Mikey's also beaten black belts. So, but I still think just like because like I said, AJ Styles has also fought martial arts guys as well, so like shoot style and all that. So when you consider that, it yes, Mikey is always punching above his, in terms of experience and in terms of like, age and ability and size and all that. He's always punching up, but AJ has punched up as well. He's also fought like 300, 400 pound opponents, so just the wide array of like the difference in experience. It's not just the fact that he's more experienced than Mikey, it's the fact that he's more experienced, you know what I mean? Like he has a variety of experience, not just experience in what he's personally doing. um Also, whereas Mikey kind of has like one move that he telegraphs a lot, that, or he doesn't telegraph, but one move that he's known for. AJ Styles has like this arsenal of moves that he's perfected, right? One of which, like I said, was the calf crusher, which is an actual like mixed martial arts move that can like destroy your knee. And I know it's called the calf crusher, but it just hurts your calf a lot. But it can actually like destroy your leg. So doing that to Mikey would kind of would be a factor if he's trying to throw a roundhouse and AJ's puts him in a submission there. Um, but as for like the superhuman element, I mean, yeah, like I said, Mikey's fought a guy who could predict his movements, um, and still won, right? But he won because of like his well, they refer to it as the darkness within him. So it was just kind of like his bloodlust, and like because he had always been like he had always just wanted to like fight and get to the top, but now he actually wanted to like kill, um, which was something that they couldn't account for. Uh, so it wasn't exactly like he was. It wasn't like he won because he was super fast and was super fast, but he won because he was fast enough to beat a guy who could predict his movements or something. He won because he, a story driven reason, right? I know I kind of embellished that a bit, but it's still technically true. Um, Whereas, like I said, AJ, fights John Cena. John Cena lifts Edge and Big Show on his shoulders, 790 something pounds. That kind of, you can't really, you can't really, when you have a guy that strong, it's hard to really compete with that. So, I mean, that's really the only factor I can think. Those are the only really things I can think of. I can't think of anything that like pushes this towards Mikey. other than the fact that he's like, his whole punching up like he does kind of just qualifies him to fight AJ. It doesn't really make him better than AJ. There's probably some big detail I'm forgetting, but yeah, I'm just gonna give this to AJ Styles just on the basis of. So I have yet to have a wrestling character in a. I mean, I've yet to have a wrestling character in a video, um, and have them lose at this point. Spoilers for Edge versus Midnight. I'll link that in the description. You don't care. Um, but yeah. Anyway, glad I got this one out of the way. Purple Engine 95.